I don't know why I'm writing this now. Maybe because I finally understand what I did, or maybe because I'm hoping someone out there can make sense of what I couldn't for far too long. Let me start with what everyone thinks they know. I'm Gerald Miles, CEO, tech visionary, billionaire, whatever title the media likes to slap on me these days. They say I'm cold, heartless, obsessed with control. And for a long time, I didn't argue, because it was true. You don't build an empire by being nice. That's what I told myself every day for 30 years. I didn't see employees, I saw gears, I didn't see smiles, I saw distractions. So when a clown showed up outside my building one morning, uninvited, unpaid, and certainly unauthorized, I saw a problem, not a person, a problem. He was there just before 8 a.m. when the flood of workers began pouring in. Red nose, big shoes, rainbow wig, the whole cliché. I watched from the 30th floor through tinted glass as he danced, mimed, juggled invisible balls, and somehow made people laugh. My employees, people I paid, a lot, to stay focused, not stand around giggling like children at a birthday party. At first I figured it was some one-time PR stunt, but then he came back. And again, every single morning, I told security to get rid of him. They said he never stepped foot on our property. Just performed on the sidewalk. Public space. Legal loophole. He's just making people smile, one guard mumbled when I pressed. That irritated me more than I care to admit. By the end of the second week, entire groups were lingering to watch his short routines. A minute here, 3 minutes there. Not a lot, but enough. They'd walk into the building still chuckling. Someone even uploaded a video of him making a balloon animal shaped like our company logo. It went viral. 2.3 million views. And then came the worst part. I started to hear laughter in the hallways. Unplanned. Organic. That kind of genuine human joy that doesn't come with a quarterly report. I hated it. I hated him. So one Monday morning, something in me snapped. I took the express elevator to the ground floor, walked past reception without a word, and shoved the front doors open. There he was, in the middle of a silent mime skit, pretending to be trapped in a glass box, mimicking the stress of being late for work, the chaos of missing a meeting, exaggerated panic with wide eyes and silent screams. The crowd was loving it. And then they saw me. I don't think I've ever heard silence fall that fast. Phones lowered, eyes widened. He turned, red nose twitching as he smiled. A big, dumb, innocent grin like I was part of the act. He even tried to hand me an imaginary phone like I was his next prop. I slapped him, hard, right across the face. The sound echoed, the imaginary phone dropped. For a second, no one moved, not even him. Then the clown stepped back, rubbed his cheek, gave a small, almost apologetic nod, and walked away. Nobody clapped, nobody laughed. The next morning, he didn't come back. And for the first time in weeks, the building was quiet again, exactly how I wanted it, or so I thought. The morning after the slap, there was no clown, no balloons, no juggling, no laughter drifting through the revolving glass doors, and, for some reason, no one was talking either. It wasn't like a normal quiet. It was stiff, heavy. You could feel it in the elevators, in the sterile hum of fluorescent lights, in the way people avoided eye contact. I passed a group of engineers by the coffee station, people who usually exchanged sarcastic jabs like clockwork. But this time, they just nodded to each other and stared at their mugs. In the boardroom, the silence was worse. People were there, but not really. I was used to running a well-oiled machine. I expected precision, pressure, results. But suddenly something felt off. Productivity dipped, our numbers lagged. A client even commented on how low energy our staff seemed lately. It was a ridiculous observation, but I heard it repeated again and again over the next few days. The worst part, I didn't get it. I thought I fixed the problem. That clown, that grinning distraction, was gone. I had restored control, hadn't I? Then the emails started, dozens all forwarded by HR, some angry, some confused, some just sad. He made my morning bearable. I don't understand why he was hurt. He reminded me of my dad. He used to do clown shows at my school before he passed. Not all of us look forward to work, Mr. Miles, but we looked forward to him. Someone even attached a slowed-down video of the moment I slapped him. It had been captured from a phone, probably one of the marketing interns, posted anonymously. It had already hit over 500,000 views, and growing. I watched myself in the video, frame by frame, the way I charged forward, the crack of the hit, the clown's face. Stunned, not angry, like I'd knocked the wind out of something far bigger than his lungs. Like he knew this wasn't really about him. And maybe it wasn't. I clicked away, furious. But later that night I had a dream. It was short, strange. I was walking through the lobby, and the place was filled with balloons, hundreds. They floated in silence, red, yellow, orange, and I could barely see the path ahead. Then a voice behind me whispered, "You're not mad at me. You're mad that they smiled without your permission." I woke up in a sweat and laughed it off. It's just a dream, I told myself. But then it came back, again and again, every night. The same voice, the same balloons, the same damn red nose spinning on the floor like it had been dropped by accident, or like it had been left behind for me. I started noticing things. An employee's daughter had drawn a picture of the clown and taped it to their cubicle. Someone left a balloon tied to the bike rack outside. Even the cleaning lady hesitated when I walked past, like she wanted to say something but didn't dare. By the end of the week, I wasn't sleeping much. I was staying later and later in the office, haunted not by what I had done, but by the way I still didn't understand why it mattered so much to everyone else. Then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, I came back from a conference call to find something unusual sitting on my desk, a small white envelope, no address, no logo, just a single red balloon sticker sealing it shut. I looked around. No one nearby. My assistant was out for lunch. I hadn't heard the door open. I peeled the sticker back slowly, heart pounding like I was defusing a bomb. Inside was a short, handwritten note. "You slapped me, but not for what I did to you. You slapped the part of yourself that forgot how to smile." No name, no threat, no return address. Just that. I read it 3 times, folded it, tucked it in a drawer, locked it. Pretended it didn't shake me, but it did, because deep down, I knew. He was right. I stared at that letter for hours before I told anyone about it. And even then, I didn't really tell them. I just let my assistant see the corner of the red balloon sticker peeking from my drawer and quickly shoved it shut like I was hiding contraband. But it had already taken root. "You slapped me, but not for what I did to you. You slapped the part of yourself that forgot how to smile." I don't know what I expected after the slap. Maybe outrage, legal action, a threat, maybe silence. But this, it felt like a mirror, and I hated mirrors. That night, I opened a bottle of bourbon and sat in my penthouse staring out at the skyline. I kept replaying that one moment in my mind, the precise second before I raised my hand, the clown's eyes. He had this calmness, not smug, not scared, just there, like he wasn't surprised, like he'd already forgiven me. Then I realized something that made my stomach twist. I didn't even know his name. I didn't know where he came from, why he showed up, why he made people laugh, why he just left. He appeared out of nowhere, sparked something in a crowd of overworked people, and vanished like smoke the moment I raised my hand. No police reports, no hospital visits, no media interviews, just gone. And now a letter, personal, handwritten, with my name spelled correctly. He knew who I was, which means this wasn't random. I started asking questions. Quietly, of course. "Anyone remember the clown?" I asked the marketing team one afternoon, feigning curiosity like it was a PR thing. They looked at each other like I'd said a forbidden word. One of the interns, Leo, spoke up first. He never gave a name, but he came every day, rain or shine. Did anyone ever talk to him? Some of us did, Leo said. He was kind, real soft-spoken, weirdly wise, like philosophical even when he made balloon animals. Said he just wanted to give people a little moment of peace. Peace. That word hit me harder than I expected. Then another voice chimed in. Janice from HR, who had always been bold enough to toe the line with me. He gave me a balloon flower once, she said. Said, this is for when the garden in your heart forgets it can bloom again. I scoffed. Sounds like a Hallmark card. She shrugged. It made me cry. That night I sat alone in my office with the lights off, watching old security footage. I had access to everything. Cameras on the sidewalk, entrances, lobbies, even across the street. Most of the time I used them to track late employees or observe how customers moved through our front plaza. But now I was using them to find a ghost. I watched clips from the week before the slap. The clown arrived each day precisely at 7:52 a.m. No car, no bus. He just walked in from the corner wearing a plain brown hoodie and pushing a small suitcase with squeaky wheels. At 7:55 a.m. he'd vanish behind a column, and at exactly 8 a.m. he'd emerge. Clown gear on, face painted, smile wide, like some kind of performance magician in a city full of people too busy to care. The show lasted 5 minutes, never more, and then he left. He never collected money, never handed out flyers, never even spoke unless spoken to. The cameras tracked him disappearing into alleys, side streets, crowds, always walking, always quiet, always leaving no trace. It was like watching joy slip through your fingers. I paused the footage on one specific frame, a moment right before he bowed to the crowd. He looked up, directly into the security camera, and smiled, like he knew I'd be watching. I stared at that face for a long time, not because of the makeup, but because somehow it looked familiar. I didn't sleep that night, not really. Something about that smile in the paused footage gnawed at me. It wasn't just the expression, it was the eyes. They had depth, like they'd seen things most people couldn't survive. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd seen them before, not recently, not in passing, but years ago, like an old photograph buried in memory. And then something clicked, a long, faded image in my mind, a children's hospital charity gala. It had to be. 15, maybe 16 years ago, I was a guest speaker, polished, rehearsed, just another PR opportunity for the company. There had been entertainment after dinner, a clown. Not this one, I thought. Couldn't be. But something about the voice, the tone, the grace in the movements. It lingered. I had to know. I pulled every string I had. Midnight turned into 3 a.m. as I searched the building's employee guest logs, security data, volunteer access reports, anything. But he was never registered. No badge, no name. It was like he'd never officially existed in our system. Then I remembered a forgotten corner of our internal server. A dusty community relations folder buried beneath years of ignored reports. And there it was, a raw security backup from 3 months ago, mislabeled and uncompressed. I scanned until I saw him again. Hoodie, suitcase, quiet arrival. And then a frame I had missed. At one point he dropped a photo while pulling out his props. A gust of wind had carried it briefly into the camera's line of sight before he caught it and tucked it away again. I zoomed in. The image was grainy, warped, but I could see it clearly enough. A man in a hospital gown, his face painted like a clown. Sitting beside a young girl in bed, both laughing, her head wrapped in a scarf. And in the corner of the photo, the words Emily and Daddy, last show 2010. My breath caught. That was him. I dug deeper. Eventually I found a non-profit news article, archived and buried on a forgotten blog, a feature on local hospital clowns back when children's entertainment still had a few spotlights. His name was Tommy Kail. He had been a professional children's performer for nearly 2 decades. He specialized in making terminally ill kids laugh, the ones who had every reason to cry. His daughter Emily had been one of them. She was diagnosed with leukemia at age 7, passed away just before turning 10. According to the article, Tommy never performed publicly for nearly a year afterward. Then one day he just showed up at a hospital again. Painted face, bag of props, smile intact. When asked why, he said, "I promised Emily I'd keep giving laughter to people who forget it exists, especially the ones who need it most." Since then, he'd traveled around the city performing outside offices, clinics, schools, always quietly, always without asking for anything in return. He didn't want tips. He didn't want recognition. He just wanted to be there, a moment of light in someone else's storm. And I slapped him. I sat back in my chair as the screen went dim. It was 4:12 a.m., and for the first time in years I felt small. I thought I understood suffering. I thought I had earned my right to hardness. But what I'd built in stone, this man had rebuilt in joy, and all he ever wanted was 5 minutes of someone's morning. He had lost his child. I had lost my humanity. And now I didn't know if I'd ever get it back. The GPS said I had arrived, but I sat in the car for almost 15 minutes before I opened the door. It was a small cemetery on the edge of the city. Quiet. Tucked between 2 rolling hills and a chain-link fence overtaken by ivy. The kind of place most people drive by without noticing until they need it. I wasn't even sure what I was doing there. Maybe guilt, maybe curiosity, maybe some silent hope that standing where he once stood would explain the unexplainable ache that had been building in my chest since that slap. The wind was cold. My shoes crunched softly over gravel and leaves as I followed a narrow footpath past rows of headstones. I didn't know the exact location, but I remembered the name. Emily Kail. Row by row I scanned until I found it. A small white stone with butterfly carvings, surrounded by smooth painted rocks and tiny plastic flowers. Someone had left a balloon, not inflated, just curled around the base of the stone, tied loosely with faded pink ribbon. And right beside it, a note, folded, wrinkled, water-stained. I almost didn't touch it. It felt like something sacred. But I had come too far to back away now. I opened it gently. "Today I couldn't make people laugh. I'm sorry, sweetheart." I tried. My throat tightened. I read it again. And again, like reading it. More times would somehow erase what I'd done, or prove that I hadn't broken something that was already barely holding together. This wasn't just a man in makeup. He was a father grieving in the only way he knew how, by giving away the one thing cancer couldn't take from him: joy. And I had stolen even that. I sat on the edge of the nearby bench and stared at the stone. For the first time in years, my mind drifted backward, not to work, not to numbers or deadlines, but to something I had long buried. I was 12. My brother Michael was 14. We were riding bikes. He wanted to race. I was scared of the traffic, but he laughed, said I worried too much. I hesitated at the curb. He didn't. The sound of that truck's brakes never left me. Neither did the silence afterward. No therapy, no grief groups. My parents didn't talk about it. We moved. I shut down. I built my success like armor, brick by brick, deal by deal, and convinced myself that joy was weakness, that focus was safety, that emotions were for people who didn't understand how cruel the world could be. But Tommy knew, and instead of retreating, he painted his face and gave. I buried my pain in steel and software. He turned his into laughter. I sat there until the sun dipped behind the hills and the shadows stretched long across the cemetery. As I stood to leave, I pulled a pen from my coat pocket and scribbled something on the back of the note. I didn't know if he'd come back the next day, but I hoped he would. I folded it carefully and placed it back beneath the ribbon. She would be proud of you. I'm sorry I couldn't see it before. I didn't tell anyone where I was going that morning. Not my board, not my assistant, not my driver. I took the subway for the first time in 15 years, wore a hoodie and jeans, kept my head down. The CEO of a Fortune 100 company standing between an exhausted barista and a teenager with a skateboard clutching a crumpled flyer I had found online. Free kids show, sat 11 a.m., Little Lights Theatre. The address was in a quiet neighborhood on the city's south end. Tired brick buildings, murals fading under decades of sunlight and smog. I arrived 10 minutes early. The doors were already open. Inside, there was no grandeur, just folding chairs, construction paper signs, and the hum of excited children. Parents huddled in the back, whispering and sipping coffee from styrofoam cups. The stage was tiny, the curtains handmade. And then I saw him. Tommy. He stood behind the curtain in full costume, red nose, oversized shoes, rainbow suspenders, practicing a juggling act with rubber chickens. The crowd didn't know yet, but I did. He was just about to step out when I approached. I didn't say anything. I just stood there. He turned and saw me. His expression didn't change. No anger, no smile either, just stillness, like he wasn't sure if I was real, or if this was some strange encore to a painful act he'd already closed the curtain on. I swallowed hard. My throat was dry. "I'm not here for a headline," I said. "I'm not here for redemption." He didn't speak. I reached into my coat and pulled out a small piece of paper, the note I'd found at his daughter's grave. The one I had written my own words on and placed back beneath the ribbon. "I read your words," I said, "and I've carried them with me since. But they weren't just about you. They were about me too." He slowly reached out and took the note, read both messages. His hand trembled. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I stepped out from behind the curtain onto the tiny stage in front of the children, the parents, the volunteers. Every head turned, whispers rippled through the crowd. Some recognized me instantly. The CEO who slapped the clown, the villain from the viral video. I walked to the center of the stage and took a deep breath. "I know I don't belong up here," I began, "but I need to say something that's overdue." The theater was silent. I once believed laughter was weakness. I thought joy was a distraction, something that slowed people down. I thought people needed pressure, not peace. And I punished someone who offered what I couldn't understand. A mother clutched her child a little tighter. I hurt a man whose heart has already endured more than I can imagine. A man who lost a child and instead of turning bitter, chose to make your children laugh. I stole that light from him, and from all of you. I turned toward the curtain. He's back there right now. And he doesn't know I'm doing this, but I need to. Not for my company, or my image, or some shallow PR move. I looked down at a little boy in the front row who wore a superhero costume and wide, innocent eyes. I'm doing this because I want to be someone my own brother would be proud of, because I forgot how to smile. And he reminded me how. I dropped to my knees and I said, in front of everyone, "I'm sorry, Tommy." Truly, deeply. From the part of me I thought was long dead. "Can you forgive me?" The silence stretched. Then soft footsteps approached. Tommy stepped onto the stage, red nose trembling slightly, his hands at his sides. He looked at me, at the man who had humiliated him, who had made the world laugh for the wrong reasons, and he offered his hand. Then in a voice soft enough to crack 1,000 hearts, he said, "Emily would have wanted me to." The room broke into applause. Not loud, not wild, just steady, gentle, healing. That night I cried in a way I hadn't since I was 12. Not because I was ashamed, but because I was whole again. 1 year later, the front plaza of Miles Tech looks nothing like it used to. The cold stone facade remains, but now it's softened by bursts of colour. Chalk art along the sidewalk, painted benches, a mural of a balloon drifting into the clouds. And every morning at 8 a.m., without fail, someone steps into that space to perform. Sometimes it's a mime, sometimes it's a violinist, sometimes it's a guy in a chicken suit doing terrible magic tricks, and sometimes it's me. The company didn't crumble when the laughter returned, it thrived. Staff turnover dropped. Productivity rose. Clients smiled more. Not because we added yoga balls and ping-pong tables, but because the building finally let people breathe. After the apology, I asked Tommy for coffee. He said no. He asked me to meet him instead at a children's ward downtown, where he was performing for kids undergoing chemo. I watched him work the room with nothing more than a squeaky horn and a paper flower. I saw what real purpose looked like, what presence meant, how power wasn't always in the loudest voice or biggest title. It was in the way a child with a tube in their nose giggled when a rubber chicken hit the floor. We talked for hours afterward. Then we planned. The Red Nose project began with one idea. Laughter is medicine. And not just for sick kids. For burned-out workers, for lonely seniors, for anyone who forgot what it meant to feel light. We created a wing in the main office, the Red Nose Wellness Center, therapy, art spaces, daily performances, a stage out front with a chalkboard schedule. Staff from every department now take turns volunteering. Some sing, some dance, some read stories. Nobody's required. Everyone is welcome. Tommy helps run it. He still shows up before 8 a.m. most days, suitcase squeaking, red nose in pocket. Last week, I joined him. I was nervous. My makeup was uneven. My juggling was embarrassing. A group of kids from a local shelter came to watch. I tripped over my oversized shoes and fell flat on my face. They roared. It was the kind of laughter that cracks something open inside you, something that had been sealed shut for too long. And in the middle of it all, one child, quiet, shy, holding a stuffed dinosaur, looked up at me and whispered, "You're funny." I hadn't heard that since I was 8. Tommy passed me a mirror later. I had forgotten I was still wearing the red nose. I left it on for the rest of the day.